Welcome to this episode of Play Conversations for 2025. Today I'm thrilled to introduce Daniel Burton, co-founder of Educated by Nature, based in Perth, Western Australia. Daniel is a passionate advocate for reconnecting children and adults with the natural world through play. A qualified primary teacher and committed nature pedagogue, Daniel, alongside his colleague Trudi Bennett, founded Education by Nature over a decade ago to support educators, schools, and families in recognising the crucial role of outdoor play in children's development. Their work is underpinned by a strong belief in children's rights, particularly Article 31, the right to play, and a drive to help communities re-meet the possibilities that natural environments offer for learning, wellbeing, and connection. In today's conversation, Daniel shares inspiring insights about the power of local nature, the challenges of our increasingly disconnected modern lives, and the profound importance of falling in love with the world around us before we can advocate for its protection. This is a rich and thought-provoking episode for anyone passionate about play, education, and sustainability. Please enjoy Daniel Burton. Please enjoy Daniel Burton. Well, kia ora, Daniel. I'm so excited to have you join me for Play Conversations for 2025. It's lovely to see you.
It's so great to see you too, Sarah, and thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm thrilled to have this chat.
I'm so excited because I met Daniel, I had the pleasure of meeting Daniel last year, firstly in Melbourne. I think it was when we first met.
Yeah.
And then we connected again in, of all places, Greenville in South Carolina in the States.
Yeah.
Certainly a very interesting experience there in the midst of Hurricane Helene.
Yep.
And we certainly saw lots of resilient players in that week that we were there. So we actually haven't met in person in our hometowns at the moment.
No, we haven't.
No.
I think we were both in Glasgow at the same time, but I don't know whether our paths crossed at the IPA World.
No, I don't think so either. So we kind of are shadowing around the world, but in our own country. So, but this year it's going to be different. I'm going to be over to Perth, and hopefully next year, are you coming to New Zealand?
IPA, absolutely, yes. So we'll definitely be at the IPA conference in New Zealand next year. So excited to be in your hometown.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's fantastic. Well, look, for our listeners, let's just start maybe at the beginning. So, can you tell us a bit about who you are, what sparked the idea for Educated by Nature?
I'd love to start there. I love an origin story. So Daniel Burton is my name. I'm a qualified primary school teacher and a lover of play and all things joyous. My dear friend and colleague Trudi Bennett and I were teachers together at a nature-based, Reggio-inspired school here in Perth, and we had the task, or actually the challenge and the joy of setting up an outdoor classroom for our upper primary class. And that, coupled with the work that I'd done in a pre-primary and year one class, having an outdoor classroom, saw the benefit of getting outdoors, of seeing play and especially play in nature as a crucial element to supporting children to be their whole and true selves. And I think seeing some of the barriers that get in the way in the education system, even at an alternative school whose focus is on child-centered approaches, Trudi and I had the passion to step aside and support other educators, other teachers and families to see the benefits of taking children outside, opening up opportunities to be outside and bringing play to the forefront of children's experiences. And so we set up Educated by Nature like almost 11 years ago now.
Oh, yeah.
And our journey has been one of working alongside parents, working alongside educators and teachers, alongside principals, and helping. I like to explain it as like walking alongside them in their journey of re-experiencing and re-meeting the possibility of play and nature as a way to engage children. And passionately standing up for Article 31 and the child's right to play.
And I like the way you talk about re-meeting. You know, I think that's so powerful but sad at the same time, that there's a need to re-meet outside of nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think children and adults gain from being in natural spaces that they just can't get anywhere else?
Oh, a big deep sigh comes through me when I hear that question. I think it's a reconnection. I speak a lot about Richard Louve's work and The Last Child in the Woods and the concept of nature deficit disorder. And he talks about the fact that we are, well, the book is 2 decades old now, and he has spoken in that book and since about us being the most disconnected from the natural world than we ever have been. And in saying that, we are nature ourselves. So if we're disconnected from nature, we're disconnected from ourselves. So a re-meeting, a getting back to nature and reconnecting with the natural world is a reconnection to ourselves, to our lineage, to our history, to our communities. And I guess that concept of seeing nature as other than human being, as being an identity and an entity in itself, or entities, trees, plants, birds, animals, and a reconnection with our kin.
Yeah. And I know for our listeners in New Zealand, you know, our Indigenous view on nature, and I know First Nations in Australia as well, you know, there's just this deep understanding of our place in the shared world we live in, rather than us sort of being top of the food chain and, you know, top dog. Why do you think this is a loaded question. Why do you think that that's particularly important at the moment?
I think it's super important because we need to see ourselves as a part of something bigger. I think we're in a time where the individual has a very big spotlight. We have a big focus on our self and our individual role to ourselves, and we need to get back to being a part of a community. And a part of that community is the natural environment as well. So just bringing balance back into the idea of being in a wider system than just our own egocentric self. And I think a lot of the work that we do with children, a lot of opportunities children have, does centralize and does focus on oneself. So an opportunity to be outside, you get to notice, you get to be aware, you get to open up awareness and connection to other than you.
And do you think this is part of why we're in the mess we're in at the moment in this world? Because we've gone astray from that collective responsibility, collective care. I know that when we were doing a lot of workshops with teachers prior to COVID, in our New Zealand curriculum, we have a series of, you know, at the start we have values and principles of the curriculum, we have our key competencies and then our learning areas. And we did a little activity with teachers where we said to them, we want you to find in the curriculum these values. You know, I think one was around being creative, one was a problem solver, and there's one around environmental sustainability. And straight away the teachers went to science in the back, but it was actually a value that sat in the front of the curriculum. And I will have to look at our refresh curriculum, but I hope it's still there. And when we talked about helping children develop an awareness of environmental sustainability and the importance of it, a lot of people think in a school context, well, we just talk about recycling and we talk about worm farms, and where you put your rubbish and all that kind of stuff. And for us, and I know certainly for my mother who ran forest school, it was in order to be able to want to care and be an advocate for Mother Nature, you had to have a deep connection to start with. It needed nature. Do you see that with the kids that you work with?
Absolutely. I mean, we live by and love David Sobel's work, and he says we need to support children to fall in love with the earth before we ask them to save it. It's a big responsibility on their shoulders if our generation is asking the next generation to be the ones to save the world. Whoa, what a job, what a
Yeah.
task.
No wonder they're a bit annoyed with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But in order to feel compassion and feel empathy and feel connection to the natural world, you need to be in it. And when I say the natural world, we're not talking like beautiful national parks and beautiful landmarks. And I mean, you're in New Zealand, you have some incredible natural spaces, and the beauty of your spaces, of the spaces that we have in Australia. I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about knowing that tree that's down the end of your street, that patch of grass land that is just around the corner, and getting to know the local nature that is in our spaces. It's the shrubs that you pass on your way to school. If you're walking to school, fingers crossed there's still some walking to school going on, that you know that a family of birds live in.
Yeah.
And it's those small patches of area that I think it's reconnecting with those elements of nature.
Yeah.
Dr. Kimberly Beasley here in WA has done some work in botanical literacies and looking at the concept of plant blindness. And that concept sends shivers down my spine, that we have this blindness to the world around us. And I know lots of people in the realm of nature connection are doing this work, but asking people to recognize logos of corporate businesses and companies and things, and their ability to recall not only the name of the company, but their slogan is like second nature. Interesting that second nature is the term we use, but asking them to name 6 plants or trees in their local area and name them by scientific name, common name, and Indigenous or First Nations name is something they really struggle to do. So bringing awareness to the fact that we need to know that tree down the end of our street before we can make a connection with it.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that we noticed in the forest school here, where the children were able to, they knew the bird calls, they knew which birds were in the forest. They had just a sense of how the forest felt going in and how it breathed and moved. And interestingly, as they got older, so the forest school finished for them when they were about 7, and they went their various ways. And a couple, my son being one of them, but a couple of them still keep in touch. And often, as they got older, I'd say, well, you go down to the forest. It was literally a playground at the bottom of our property. And my son would say, it feels different now. As he got older, there was something for him, I think, because of the situation of being there in that moment with his friends and the magic that he could describe, and all of them will still say it was the best school they ever had because of how they connected at that time. And then I think as he's huge now, so it looks smaller and it's not as, the magic's changed. But it also recall where I live. Often I'll go out for a walk. I live in the country, and I was fascinated that there was sort of a cliff area by the side of the road, and I could hear this kind of screeching noise going on, and someone had put a little sign up that said, "Be careful, nesting kingfishers." And it was just, I just thought how lovely that someone's just come along and going, hang on a minute, this is not just a hole in a rock here with some noise coming out of it. This is someone's home. There are babies in there, and we just, the power of that right now, if we had that everywhere in the world, it would be a much nicer world to be in, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I know you've probably got a million stories about moments that you've seen in your work that's kind of made you stop and think and go, yes, this is exactly why we do what we do. Have you got any that particularly come to mind to share?
Oh, so many. I think yesterday I was supporting a group of families in a bush play group. So it's the space we're using is on the edge of the Derbil Yarragon, the Swan River here in Perth. It's a muddy bank right at the edge of a a really brown coloured, muddy, beautiful river. And I'm working with children who are between the ages of about 12 months and 4 years of age. And one of them, Woody, has been fascinated each week that we've had this play group at the ground just next to the river's edge. Because at the moment, well, for the past 5 weeks, it's been really hard and rocky. There's been a patch of mud that looks like craters, and it's all broken apart. And he's been able to lift up like chunks of mud, and he's been placing them in buckets of water and seeing what happens to that mud. Well, this weekend we had a big storm in Perth, and I can only imagine from the evidence that the bank of the river actually broke and the water level rose to a point that it flooded this crackly, like moon surface almost space that we've been exploring. And of course, with all of that water, that was no longer a crackly moon surface hard rock space. That was a mud sludge. And the joy that Woody and all of the other children at the playgroup experienced in exploring that space. He came upon that space with just joy and fascination in his eyes. You could see his whole body stop and this electricity go through his body when he saw what had happened and rushed over to that space. And there was a tentativeness because it was super slippery. So also all the parents were, because we're much taller than children, walking very tentatively on that space. But that joy of getting in there and exploring the mud. And I think one of the exciting things that happened is there was one child who has been much more tentative the whole term at getting his feet muddy. And we're seeing this more and more in the work that we're doing with children, that aversion to being muddy or dirty, I like to call it earthy. But Woody and his joy was infectious with this whole group. And I saw him pull this other child over, not physically, with his joy. And this other boy was able to take a couple of tiny steps into that mud and experience that. Straight away, he jumped out and went down to the river and washed his feet off. But then he came back and tried again. So that infectious, playful joy that happens in these natural environments is just and the joy that nature provided that experience. So it wasn't anything that we had done as adults to the space. It wasn't anything that the children had done specifically. It wasn't equipment that we bought. It was simply nature providing an opportunity to inspire connection, joy, collaboration, experimentation, and play.
Awesome. And so this is for our little ones. I know that you're also running right up to teenagers, aren't you? So some, clearly there'll be some differences and similarities in your observations, right?
Yeah. So I'm loving at the moment we're supporting a school, a group of year sevens. In fact, the whole year 7 cohort across the whole year in building what we've named a self-build play space. At the start, we were calling it an adventure playground, and that didn't feel like the right terminology, primarily because what it did for the school is gave them an image of the year 7s are going to be building at a playground. They kind of glossed over the adventure part and they heard playgrounds. And then halfway through last year, because we started the project at the beginning of last year, some of the teachers were like, well, where's the playground? They haven't built anything yet. They had, because we bring pallets and drills and hammers and nails, and we give the resource of time and permission. And they had built incredible structures and hiding holes and cubbies. But these are 12 and 13-year-olds who still need the opportunity to play and still need that opportunity to play as a protected, honoured space. So we've renamed it as a self-build play space. And just the joy that these children experience in that space, and actually coming back to that different ways that younger and older children play, what we saw last year was that there was a group of children, these year 7s, who had constructed a simple square cubby house shelter out of these pallets and actually turned it into a shop. And they had a kitchen and they had a space that they were serving things that they were making in the kitchen. they went into sociodramatic play. They went into that like deep imaginative play. And as facilitators, as play workers, we just stood back and were in awe of the opportunity that these 12, 13-year-olds had to still feel comfortable enough and have the freedom and permission to play in these ways that they so desperately still need to play in. And our society doesn't let them.
No, and it's something that I is one of my most treasured, important things that if nothing else, I want to be able to get people to understand just how powerful that imaginative play is and how important it is. And yet society turns around and says, you're too old for that now. You know, that's babyish. And it's magic when you see it, isn't it? It's just incredible. Yeah. Just the story and the elaboration and the richness and the skills to self-manage and negotiate and problem solve and all the things that we want adults to be doing and be competent in. You see it in that sociodramatic play.
And also what we saw was in this space, and we've seen it throughout the 18 months that we've been working there, is that I'm going to say those children, I don't like that term, but we hear it said all the time, the children that we got warned about or told that we need to keep an eye out for, or they're the troublemakers, those were the ones that are the leaders. In fact, we had a brainstorm because we start each series off with the Year 7s in a brainstorm, just a quick on like bits of wood, big pallets of wood, to gather their ideas on what play means to them. How do they play? And one of the questions we asked was what looks risky or what looks dangerous about this space. And sadly, it broke my heart. There was a student's name written on that brainstorm as something that was going to be dangerous in this space. And at the end of that first session, that child whose name was written on that brainstorm was the leader of a group that created this incredible structure. That child was the one who was giving instructions and guidance to others. He was the one that was right in there with the drill and doing like heavy, hard, intricate work, but powerhousing, I don't know whether that's a term, but I'm going to use it, towards his goal. He was a leader. And Richard Louv says that. He says time and time again, educators he talks to hears that when they take learning outside, when they bring play into learning opportunities, or combine those two, because they are combined, the troublemakers from the class become the leaders. And he posits, how many leaders are we losing?
Yeah, absolutely. And what is our concept of leadership if it's only how it fit? I mean, it's, you know, like anything we have in a classroom or a school situation, we have this specific way in which learning looks and what a leader looks. And, you know, a lot of it's around compliance and following the rules and doing, you know, what someone else tells you to do, when actually we want these really creative, out of the box, innovative thinkers who can then lead other people and motivate them to come with me. And I've got this idea, and you see it all the time outside in play, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it's not just about the adult, about the educator or the teacher seeing that child in a different light, but what's crucial is the other children, their peers, seeing them in a different light and going, oh, I didn't know they had that capability within them, because they haven't been given the right environment to show their skills. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think, you know, just coming back to that sociodramatic play too, I'm so sad that imagination, magic, fantasy, you know, pretense, whatever you want to call it, is something that we have as, you know, as we come up into adulthood, that becomes the thing we do to relax or to unwind, you know. We go to costume parties for a 50th, or, you know, what is it, like Comic-Con dress ups and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And yet we see it as sort of mental health relief in some ways for us to, you know, let our hair down, but we don't see how valuable it is for kids, and particularly as our kids grow and our adolescents and things like that, to continue to have that opportunity to try on to try on new things, to try on different characters and different skins, and share our ideas. I just find it so sad.
Yeah. And I guess that you just said the word skins, and time and time again, it brings me back to the fact that our children, our teenagers, are still finding that opportunity. Because if you look to Fortnite, one of the key elements of Fortnite is choosing different skins.
Yeah.
And they get that chance to put on a costume, to put on a new layer, to take on a character.
Yeah.
So they are doing it, but a lot of that play now is happening in the virtual world. And then we come into those conversations of, our kids are spending too much time on digital technology. Well, they are, and it's about balance. But Peter Gray talks about all the time that that is the landscape that they've got given.
That's their free play. That's their free play. They're not being watched in that world, not being hovered over. Yeah, no rules. Yeah.
We talk to adults all the time. We do the play memories conversation. I'm sure you do this as well, is think back to your childhood and a time where you were in play, and think about what it smelled like, sounded like, tasted like, looked like, felt like. And the things that come up time and time again are those experiences are usually outdoors in nature or natural environments. They're with other children, often children that they don't know, and they are outside of the supervision of adults.
Yeah.
Where do our children get those three opportunities now? Well, actually, it's online. Yeah. It's in those digital landscapes.
Yeah.
So if we want to reduce the time that our children are spending in digital landscapes, we need to give them opportunities where those three things can be achieved in real life, IRL.
IRL, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And so thinking about some of why that's not happening, those challenges that we come across around advocating, particularly for play outside, and I sort of want to clarify here that the work we do is around helping schools understand the importance of play during contact time. So not just at recess or break. We want play, as much as we can in children's lives. And I realize too that in school settings, there are things you've got to watch for in terms of, regulations and curriculum and all that kind of stuff. But it's not to say that children can't be learning outside as part of their core business of the curriculum.
Yeah.
But when we look at play through the lens of outside school as well, and particularly that sort of free play, less supervision, less adulteration, what's preventing that in society at the moment?
I think there's a bunch of things. I think the over-scheduled nature of our children's lives is one of those things. There's a lot of engagement in after-school activities, whether that be tutoring or after-school, outside-of-school sport or music lessons, which all of those have their benefit and their place in a child's life, but there's just a lot of them. So actually, one of the brainstorms that we did with these year sevens is when we say, how do you play, or what things do you do in play? One of the year sevens wrote down and told us, I don't play, I don't have time, I'm too busy. When a 12-year-old is telling us that they're too busy to play, there's something going wrong. So I think overscheduledness and the overscheduled nature of our children's lives is one of those things. Communities to play with. So in order for children to have the opportunity and the want to go and play, we need to have spaces where there are other children. So what are their neighborhoods looking like? What is their street looking like? Who are their neighbors? What spaces around their local neighborhood are children gathering? Because if those spaces are devoid of other children, then that's more difficult for them to access play opportunities themselves. Not to say children can't play by themselves and play doesn't happen solo, but in these spaces where especially our teenagers are wanting to play, it's with peers, it's collaborative.
And often, I know certainly there's almost a stigma now around a group of teens hanging out. They must be getting up to trouble, right? You see a hanging on the street corner or down at the park, what are they up to? They're probably doing drugs and smoking and all that kind of stuff, right? And also too, I think that speaks to the idea of what play looks like for older kids. And I know I've kind of tried to get people to understand that you know, you're not going to see a bunch of teenagers necessarily down there with some Play-Doh and wooden blocks, right? But that play, the concept of play is very much about peers and that connection and almost a narrative play, but physical play as well, isn't it? And trying on those different identities.
Yeah. And that reminds me, so I supported a group of young people in a play summit that we supported last year as a part of the Play Matters collective here in Perth. And instead of having an adult keynote, we actually had a keynote panel of 12 to 17-year-olds. And we interviewed them, and they shared on their experiences of play. And one thing they shared with us is, as teenagers, especially, they were saying, we want adults to realize that we still want to play, but often we feel pushed out of spaces to play. And they were talking specifically about playgrounds and play equipment, and that the spaces that they have allocated to play in public open spaces is the skate park.
Yeah.
And that's acceptable for teenagers to play on. But if the teenagers head towards the swings, well, that's for the younger children.
Yeah.
Or if they want to be on the merry-go-round or the roundabout thing, then that's just for the young children. Or if they want to hang out in the sand pit, well, that's definitely for young children. And there's this idea that once young children come along, they need to move on.
Yeah.
So we need to look at that as a concept and a way of making space and permission and seeing it's okay for children of all ages, in fact, for people of all ages to play in the ways that they need to play.
And again, we see it in school, whereas as I don't know about you there, I'm sure it's similar, where we have, you know, resourcing in primary schools for play during, you know, recess times and break times. But by the time you get to high school, well, you just sit or you wander around, because now you don't need a playground or a sandpit, or, you know, or you're going to go out and play sport, but you're not going to just muck about and play something. You know, I don't think I've ever seen a fort being built at a high school, you know. So it is really sad. What other sort of challenges have you come across advocating for play, particularly for that outdoor space?
And I just want to jump back on that schoolyards and the way that play happens for teenagers. I was involved in a webinar series or a think tank the other day with the University of Canberra, who are doing some research at the moment into the ways that play spaces and outdoor spaces in high schools enable children to play. And some of the discourse that was happening was around the fact that teenagers play in different ways and have different play needs, which I absolutely agree with. But a couple of the comments that were coming up is that teenagers don't like to move around as much as younger children, and they like to sit down at tables and talk. And yes, absolutely, that is something that teenagers like to do. But my challenge was that children will play in the ways that their environment allow and support them and give them permission to play. So if our schoolyards for high schools are, concrete paving, picnic tables and table tennis tables, that's the stuff that they're going to do. But if we have equipment for them, if we have open wide spaces, if we have spaces with lots of trees and bushes and shrubs, and we have loose parts, they will make cubbies and dens and shelters, and they will play in those different ways. And then the other thing that gets in the way is uniform. And I am a stickler for uniforms in schools, and we need to do something about this, especially our girls, because our girls often are in uniforms of skirts and dresses and formal shoes. And
can't climb a tree in those.
No, you can't hang upside down in those. Our boys in long trousers and ties. In formal shirts and blazers.
I think just to add to that too, just remembering the trauma of being a teenage girl as well, is you know, you're also very conscious of body at that stage, even more so. So, you know, to be able to be comfortable in something you're wearing, I think for me, what shone in my memory of high school was the PE uniform, the rules around the socks and the skirts, and just not being comfortable in my skin going to school. Whereas if I was able to wear what I wanted to wear, then that would not have been the thing that occupied my brain, you know, for many of the hours I was at school. And I think to be conscious of, it is coming back to, we're trying on these different identities, we're trying on these different things, and we're trying to get comfortable in the body we've got and who we are, and recognizing that as well, isn't it?
Yep. And that as a form of play, of playing with identity.
Well, it's why we have goths, right? We have, you know, the nerds, we have the, you know, all the different characters that we have in the school. I mean, I don't sort of subscribe to putting people into boxes like that, but people are trying on those things, you know, girls and boys that want to wear makeup, jewelry, piercings, tattoos. I mean, it's the human condition, isn't it, to try and just make yourself a bit different from everyone else.
And I guess in schools, and especially private schools, it's called a uniform for a reason. We're making everyone one uniform image, which I think is dangerous in a play realm as well.
Absolutely. Any other challenges you find, you know, in advocating for this, getting people on board?
A big one for me is permission. So whether this is in schools and teachers, whether this is in primary school, prep school, high school, early childhood seems to be a little bit different. There seems to be that innate permission or assumed permission, but that as the teacher, I have a responsibility and I'm not allowed to bring play into these experiences, that there's an expectation from principals, deputy principals, the department, higher up policymakers, that I'm doing things in a certain way. And similarly, we see that working with parents is they're not sure whether they have the permission from their peer group, from other parents, from society as a whole, from local communities and government, of managers of spaces, to allow their children to play in the ways that they want to play.
In terms of being a good parent.
Absolutely. That responsibility.
What society says.
How does it look for me to be a good parent?
And it's interesting you talk about the early childhood years as different to further on. And I wonder, I was talking with someone the other day about this. I wonder if that's because we still see the early years as not really learning. You know, so it's more acceptable for kids to be mucking about a bit because it's more to do with making friends and having fun and, you know, that sort of not real serious stuff. But once they start at school, well, we just don't have time for that stuff now. We've got to get on with it. Do you feel that that's potentially in there somewhere?
Absolutely. And that question about, I've got to fit in all of this curriculum. As a requirement that I've got to do this stuff, I've got to get this done, and there's not enough time. So let's get rid of that play stuff because that's frivolous time and that's not learning. Do you still feel that there I mean, I've heard some lovely things about Perth curriculum. I don't know whether that's accurate or not, but do you feel that the curriculum is not necessarily the barrier? Is it an interpretation of the curriculum and implementation of it? I think so. Definitely an implementation of the curriculum. And I think the biggest danger is siloed curriculum. So seeing that I have to cover my literacy, my numeracy, my science, my HAS, social sciences, my geography, all separately. And that I can't combine things because I have these specific checklists that I need to achieve and get through for each child in each of these areas. And so, if you silo out and you make space in your week for every single learning area, that is a busy week. And I think it comes back to trust. Trust in children's ability to get what they need to get. And learn in ways that their bodies need to learn in order to achieve those goals. It's just tricky that a lot of the really important things that we need our children to develop throughout their whole schooling life are things that are not easy to quantify, that are not easy to assess.
Absolutely. You can't measure the progress of self-regulation on a number scale, you know, or a benchmark for, well, you were below and now you're here, and and imagination and creativity. Well, we can't, you know, give a score to that, although I'm sure people have tried. Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's, you know, I'm sure I've heard somewhere that it's the things that we can't measure, the ones that we need to have the most, isn't it? And so we dumb it down really to the things that are quantifiable for school. Yeah. So just sort of thinking as we finish up now, where to next? What sort of a project for you, or what's on the horizon for you this year?
This year we are really working with more high schools, trying to get into more high schools to support them to prioritise play and see that a landscape of play opportunities is really beneficial to their students. Over here in Perth, I'm going to put it out there, we are working at the moment on opening Perth's first adventure playgrounds, or we call it community backyard as a term here in Australia. So that is a project that we're currently working on, and working with a few partners on that. But yeah, just more opportunities to get out there and share the importance of play, the importance of nature connection, and really building those ways to be as community.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to coming over. I'll be over to see you, and hopefully, where are you at with the community backyard? Is that happening? Or still in planning stage?
It's still in planning stage.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
Manifesting that and putting it out. Absolutely. Yeah.
Come back when it's halfway there and when it's done. So here's my final question, and we're doing this slightly differently this year. In the past, I have asked people to bring out their magic wand and to think of one thing that they'd wish for if they could. This year, what I want you to do is leave my next guest, who I don't even know who this is yet. I have no idea what order I'm doing any recording in. That pretty much sums up my life right now. But what is the one question you'd love for me to ask our next guest?
All right. So I have a few in my mind, but I think the one I want to go with goes back to that idea of being connected to place and knowing who's in your community. So my question is, I want to say what, but change it to who is your favorite tree in your neighborhood?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay. I'll have to, I wonder if I should think about who I bring along next, or whether I just dump them on it, and that would be interesting as well. I'll have to think about that and see who I might bring in and pose that question to them. Well, that's fascinating. And look, thank you so much for your time today, Daniel. I really appreciate it. And I will be sharing Daniel's details on our Spotify link, and I will be putting that in the bottom here of the video. And for anyone who would like to reach out and learn more about Daniel's work, I'm sure he's happy to share more. And for those who do want to hear from Daniel but can't get over to Perth, then keep in mind our 2026 IPA conference, which is coming to Christchurch in November in 2026. And so he will be there for sure, along with some other amazing speakers and things too. So thank you, Daniel. I'm looking forward to catching up again very soon.
We'll see you soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks.